Welcome to 100% Alive, the show where you overcome your fears, your frustrations, and your failures to do what you never thought possible. I'm Dr. Lauren Murfield, and I'm your host. Think about it. You've heard that phrase over and over. In today's show, we're going to think about it. We're going to think about thinking. I'm Dr. Lauren Murfield, and welcome back to 100% Alive. Think. We're all think we think. But I would argue when we're in survivalist mode, we're really more reacting than we are thinking. We're simply reacting based on our experience, based on our background, based on our current situation. And what really happens there? We're just reacting in a straight line from what we used to be. But the Bible says in Romans 12:2, not to be conformed by the world around us, but to be transformed by the renewal of our mind. Transformed. I've thought about that. Get that, I've thought about thinking. And over the years, it has evolved to me. I've learned more and more about it. And so I want to share some things with you about how literally our mind works and how we can literally pivot the part of the brain that we are thinking out of. And that by doing that, we don't have to be victims. We don't have to blame. We don't have to live in scarcity. We can actually live in abundance. We can live alive, 100% alive. Let's get into it. There's a couple different parts of the brain that we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about the amygdala, or the limbic system, which is the emotional part of the brain. It's also called the reptilian brain. And that's a reactive type of thing. And then we're going to talk about the neurofrontal cortex, which is the executive brain. And if you want to just break them down, the emotional and then the strategic part of the brain. And just so you know, the strategic part of the brain is not fully developed until about age 26. So you want to see some impulsivity of the younger people and some of the poor decisions. That right there could be a big part of it, is that physically their brain hasn't developed yet. Let's talk about the amygdala, talk about the negative. And I'm going to make it very, I'm not going to get real deep into it because we just need to know the basics here. So if you're a neuroscientist, bear with me on this, okay? When we're living in survival, a lot of times we're running on emotion and we're saying, I just got to do this. And so we're oftentimes running out of fears, frustrations, and failures. And when we're running out of fear, that's a negativity. And that negative mindset, when we're operating out of that, that tells our brain to secrete certain hormones, for example, cortisol. And those are the ones that are fight, flight, or freeze. In other words, we're going to react negatively, we're going to react out of anger, we're going to push back, or we're going to run like Galen. We're going to get away from, we're going to avoid conflict. Or we're just going to freeze. I can't do anything. I don't know what else to do. I'm frozen. That's living in survival mode. One of those three. Now, what's missing out of that? What's missing is saying, wait a minute, let me analyze the situation. Let me see what's really going on here. Let me take the higher road. Let me look to solve the problem here. That's what the strategic executive brain does. And everybody can develop that. I'm sorry, I'm not going to listen to anybody who says, you just don't understand who I am. I understand that you've been trained this way. And I remember, and this is why, by the way, I want to show you this background, is that you unzip the mind, unzip that, and we look inside. And when I was teaching interpersonal communication, I had students all the time come in and say, well, Doc, you just got to understand that's the way I am. Well, if that's the way you are, why are you taking the course? Oh, well, it's required. Why do you think we required the course? It's not so you know exactly what to say to the other person, but it's really more about understanding who you are, who the other person is, what the situation is, and how can you have other ways? How can you transform your thinking to find the new opportunities, the opportunities for growth, opportunities for both of us to live 100% alive? That comes from re-engineering our thinking, is the way I like to phrase it. Unzip it, get in there and work with it, reprogram it, zip it back up, and then go at it again, constantly be back and forth, back in there, helping to understand what's going on, what are better options, and then doing it. And doing it so often that we make it a habit. We transform our thinking, so then it becomes subconscious. When we've zipped it up, it's subconscious. I like that. Well, we got to learn to get out of that amygdala, get out of that cortisol. And what's going on there too is when we say, well, that's the way I am. What happens literally in your mind is that the patterns that we developed in our mind kind of create little ruts, established pathways for these neurons and hormones and everything to travel in. What we have to do is we have to form a new network, form a new route. Now, this happens when people have had strokes. When one part of the brain is shut off, the brain will revitalize by finding a new route. And it may take time to do that if the damage isn't too bad. We literally create new pathways, new highways in our mind, so that next time it's easier for us to react a better way. Wow, don't you love that? We can, and the Bible talks about this. We don't have to be conformed. In other words, we don't have to react and say, well, okay, I have to do it your way. No, we can literally look at it and say, there's a better way. When we become pivotal, as I write and teach, constantly looking to change and point to the best opportunity available. That's become pivotal. When we do that, we're literally working out of a different part of our brain. Notice how many times I've said literally in this. It's not just me thinking this. This is based on research, scientific research that says this is what happens. So when I was feeling sorry for myself, when I was feeling like a failure feeling like a victim as a chore boy and warehouse worker and things like that, I just had to stop and take realization that there was a better way and then figure it out. What stopping does, pausing does, is it shifts the brain. It stops the emotions and it shifts me into the logic. And I became a much more logical person. Still emotional, but it's in a good way. At least that's what I'm working on. And it's becoming 100% alive and saying, where is the best opportunity? Now, notice what happens is you're using the good emotions and you're pumping out the good hormones. Wow. And that's like running. Once you get to running and you get that runner's high, you say, I want more of it. Wow, it's like the chocolate. It gives you that same feeling of being loved. It's doing what we never thought possible. So what I want to do is I want to I want us to take a good hard look at this. And I want you to think to yourself, what problems do I have when I'm reacting to the world around me? What problems come up when I try and conform? Hey, I'm guilty. I'm guilty. You know, when I try and be funny, I tend to end up alienating people. I'm trying too hard. Maybe you're the same way. Maybe you're trying too hard. Maybe you're trying to fit in. Notice how that really messes up our values, messes up who we are inside. And it's saying, you know, that's not where we need to be. We need to be in a better space. We need to re-engineer our thinking. Unzip it, take it down, put it in the forefront of our brain. And just because I said it's not fully developed until 26, it doesn't mean you can purposely do stupid things at 22 and say, well, they gotta give me a break on that because my brain's not fully developed yet. No, we're always trying to be 100% alive. And doing that, what's the parts when you look at that reaction? Find one thing. And then what I want you to do is when you find yourself bumping up against that, stop. Stop and reconsider. Don't give yourself a break and say, well, that's just the way I am. You know, when I hear people, when I throw out a good idea or something, and I hear people say, well, Doc, you don't understand, that's the way I am. That just doesn't work for me. Or when they say, well, you just got to understand about the situation. What I'm seeing is people digging in their heels and they're unwilling to change. And I find myself, when I hear myself saying those things, I want to challenge you. Don't say those things. But when you hear them, think, stop. Now, what's the better option? What's the better opportunity? Instead of saying that's not who I am, and that's not who I am, say, okay, but is it who I want to be? Is it who I want to become? And what happens if I live 100% alive here? What are the possibilities? Bring a smile to your face? I hope so. So I challenge you to do that. I'm going to have a challenge, to believe it, to reach higher, and then to share it. But right now, 1 year from today, look at that one problem area. Look ahead. And now see yourself as solving that problem. You've worked into your executive brain and you figured out a way, whether it's learning from somebody else, whatever it'd be, you've learned a way that you don't have to react like that anymore. Whatever way that is, whatever reaction that you used to. And you can live 100% alive. You can celebrate that prize inside. You can celebrate other people. What does your life look like? Isn't that exciting? Isn't that exciting when we can look at, we can even change our brains. We can transform our thinking. We can do what we never thought possible. That's exciting. Impossible. Oh, by the way, if I haven't said it before, impossible simply means we don't have the resources yet. And in this episode, you've gotten a resource. You can switch from the emotions of reaction, self, outside in living, to an inside out thinking that says, I can work out of the logic. I don't always have to work out of fear, frustrations, and failures. I can work out of possibilities. Thank you for being with me. Thank you for joining me on this venture. I am Dr. Warren Murfield. I love living 100% alive. Thanks for joining our show. I'm Dr. Lauren Murfield, and until next week, remember, don't just survive. You were born to live 100% alive.